Why was no one looking at her when the bullets started falling? Gun smoke tore across the mountainside like breath from something ancient, something violent. U.S. Rangers pushed through rocky terrain, boots crunching on loose shale when the first round slammed into the ground, inches from their feet. The sound was distinctive, that crack of high-velocity rounds breaking the sound barrier followed by distant thunder, sniper fire, high position, somewhere they couldn't see. Sergeant Marcus Chen's voice cut through chaos, sharp, controlled panic barely held in check, but no one could spot the shooter. Trained eyes scanned ridgelines, searching for muzzle flash, for movement, for that telltale glint of scope glass catching sunlight. Nothing. Only rock and shadow and thin mountain air that made everything shimmer like a mirage. 7 invisible rifle barrels had them locked down, like a web spun by something that knew exactly how to kill. Each ranger could feel it, that crawling sensation between shoulder blades, the animal knowledge that crosshairs were painting red dots on their backs. The team was seconds away from being systematically eliminated. Captain Weiler knew it. His men knew it. This was how ranger squads died in these mountains, pinned, helpless, picked off one by ghosts they never saw. Then a voice crackled through the radio, cold, low, female, utterly calm. "Hold position, I see them." The Rangers froze. Who the hell was that? Elena Hart, the comm specialist, the quiet woman they'd brought along to handle radios and translate local dialects. The one they'd assumed couldn't fight, had never fought, probably couldn't even hit a target at 50 meters. But in the next 47 seconds, all 7 enemy snipers dropped. One by one, precise, methodical, inevitable. And when the shooting stopped, when the mountain fell silent except for wind whistling through rocks, the Rangers of Bravo 1-2 stood in stunned disbelief. She's a sniper, not just a sniper, a ghost. But 12 hours earlier no one knew, no one suspected, no one asked the right questions. The morning briefing at Forward Operating Base Serpent had started like any other. Operations tent filled with controlled chaos, tactical maps glowing on screens, satellite imagery updating in real time, the smell of strong coffee mixing with gun oil and desert dust. 12 Rangers from Bravo 1-2 gathered in pre-dawn darkness, their faces illuminated by pale blue light of displays. Captain David Weiler stood at the front, a man carved from old leather and hard decisions, 42 years old with a scar running from left eyebrow to temple, a souvenir from Fallujah he never talked about. His eyes were the color of steel, and they'd seen things that made younger men wake up screaming. "Korvak Ridge," he said, tapping the topographic display with calloused fingers. The map showed brutal landscape, jagged peaks, narrow valleys, the kind of terrain that broke ankles and ended careers. "Enemy communications hub dug into the mountainside like a tick. We go in, destroy it, get out. Intel says light resistance, 4 to 6 hostiles, minimal armament." The Rangers nodded. Standard direct action. Their bread and butter. Fast insertion, destroy the target, extract before the enemy could respond in force. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen leaned against a support pole, arms crossed. At 31, he was the team's designated marksman, a role that required patience, precision, the ability to put rounds on target at distances that made normal riflemen weep. He'd grown up in San Francisco, son of immigrants who wanted him to be a doctor. Instead, he became someone who saved lives by taking them. "What's the exfil plan if things go sideways?" he asked. 2 Blackhawks on standby, Northern Plateau, 15-minute response time once we call them in. Weiler zoomed in on the extraction point. "Air cover available if we need it, but command wants this quiet, in and out like smoke." Corporal James Reeves, the team's breacher and a man who loved explosives the way some men loved their wives, grinned. "When does anything we do stay quiet?" Scattered laughter. Dark humor was the pressure valve that kept Rangers sane. "One addition to the roster," Weiler continued. He glanced toward the tent entrance and something in his voice changed. Not softer exactly, but careful. "Hart, Communications specialist. She knows the local dialects, Pashto and Dari both, handles our encrypted channels and coordinates air support if we need it. The tent flap opened. Elena Hart stepped inside and every eye turned to her. 28 years old, 5'7", which was tall for a woman but average among the Rangers. Dark brown hair pulled back in a severe regulation bun that revealed a face all hard angles and sharp edges. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing that wasn't absolutely necessary. She wore standard combat fatigues, the same pixelated tan and brown as everyone else, with a radio pack strapped to her tactical vest. Her sidearm, a Sig Sauer M17, rode low on her right thigh. No rifle. No carbine, just the pistol and the radio gear. But it was her eyes that made people pause. Gray, not blue-gray or green-gray, but the pure gray of winter clouds before snow. Calm, distant, like she was looking at something far beyond the tent walls. She didn't smile, didn't introduce herself with the usual nervous energy of someone joining a new team, just gave a single nod, precise, economical, and moved to stand at the back of the tent. Sergeant Chen leaned over to Corporal Derek Lawson, the team's pointman. "She looks like she's never fired a shot in her life," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Lawson, a rangy Texan with a slow drawl and fast reflexes, studied her for a moment. "Radio girl. Bet she stays in the rear with the gear while we do the real work." Elena heard them. She had the kind of hearing that came from years of listening to radio chatter through static and chaos. But she said nothing. Her face didn't change. She simply set down a small duffel bag beside her feet. Lockable, military issue. The kind used for sensitive equipment. And waited. Weiler ran through the mission timeline with smooth efficiency of a man who'd briefed 1,000 operations. Insertion at 0400 hours. 2 Blackhawks dropped them on the southern approach. 15-kilometer hike through mountainous terrain. They hit the target at dawn when guards are tired and sloppy. Plant charges. Destroy the hub. Exfil via helicopter from the northern plateau. Questions? Silence. These were professionals. They knew their jobs. Good. Wheels up in 2 hours. Get your gear, check your weapons, and get whatever sleep you can. Dismissed. The Rangers filed out, talking in low voices about loadouts and ammunition counts. Elena remained behind, her eyes fixed on the topographic map still glowing on the main screen. Weiler noticed, "You good, Hart?" She looked up, and for just a moment he saw something flicker in those gray eyes, something that might have been recognition or memory or calculation. Then it was gone. "Yes, sir. You've done field ops before." He kept his voice neutral, but he was studying her the way he'd studied terrain before an assault. "Some." He waited for more. She offered nothing, just that single word, flat and final. "This isn't like working from a base camp," Weiler said, trying a different angle. "The terrain is hostile. The enemy is experienced. Things can go wrong fast." "I understand. Stick close to the team. Don't wander off. We'll keep you safe." Elena's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. If Weiler hadn't been watching closely, he would have missed it. "Understood, sir." She picked up her duffel bag, lifting it with an ease that suggested it was lighter than it looked, or she was stronger than she appeared, and left the tent. Weiler stared after her, frowning. Something about her bothered him, not in a bad way necessarily. More like she didn't fit. She moved too well for someone who was supposedly just a comm specialist. Her eyes had swept the map with a kind of tactical awareness that took years to develop. And that bag she carried, the way she handled it suggested it contained something important, something she didn't want anyone else to see. He made a mental note to keep an eye on her. But there was something Weiler didn't know, something none of them knew. Elena Hart had carried a rifle before, had looked through a scope and calculated windage and elevation, and the precise moment when breath and heartbeat aligned and the trigger broke clean. She'd been one of the best, had taught at Fort Benning, had a record that made senior officers take notice. until the day everything went wrong, until the mission that ended with 7 bodies and a promise she'd never carry a rifle again. She'd buried that part of herself, locked it away, told herself she could live as someone different, someone safer. But the mountains remember, and so do old skills. They don't die, they just wait. The insertion went smooth. 2 Blackhawks, ungainly metal beasts that could take a beating and keep flying, dropped them on the southern approach to Korvac Ridge under cover of darkness. The rotors beat the air like war drums. Then the aircraft banked away into the night and the Rangers were alone with the mountain. The hike was brutal. 15 kilometers of steep ascents and narrow trails that skirted cliff edges where one wrong step meant a 200-meter fall onto rocks below. The temperature dropped as they climbed. Breath came in white clouds. Sweat froze on skin. Alina moved with the team, not at the front where the pointman picked the path, not at the rear where the tail gunner watched for pursuit, somewhere in the middle, protected, out of the way, where comm specialists were supposed to be. She monitored frequencies, listened to encrypted traffic, checked in with base every 30 minutes with position updates, did her job, nothing more. But she watched everything, the way the Rangers moved, the spacing between them, the way Chen constantly scanned high ground, the way Lawson's hand never strayed far from his rifle. These were good soldiers, well-trained, experienced, the kind of men who came home from deployments when others didn't. Still, there was something off. She couldn't put her finger on it. Some instinct honed by years in combat zones, a feeling that they were being watched, that the mountain held more than rock and wind. She keyed her radio, quiet voice, professional. Serpent Base, this is Bravo 1-2, passing checkpoint Alpha, no contact, continuing to objective. The response crackled back. Copy Bravo 1-2, proceed as planned. They reached the communications hub just as dawn broke across the peaks, pink and gold lights spilling across snow-capped ridges. Beautiful. The kind of beauty that made you forget you were in a place designed to kill you. The target was exactly where Intel said it would be. A reinforced bunker built into the mountainside, camouflaged with netting and natural cover. Satellite dishes and radio antennas protruding from the rock-like mechanical growths. Weiler raised his fist. The team stopped, dropped into cover positions. Lawson moved forward on his belly, slow and careful, until he had a clear view of the target. He whispered into his mic. 4 hostiles visible, armed with AKs, standard patrol pattern, no sign of additional forces. Copy, Weiler said. He glanced at Reeves. You're up, plant the charges, 2 minutes in and out. Reeves nodded, checked his explosive pack, moved forward with the kind of confidence that came from blowing things up for a living. That's when the feeling in Alina's gut crystallized into certainty. This was wrong. Intel said light resistance, 4 to 6 hostiles, but her eyes were scanning the ridgelines, the high ground, the positions where she would have placed Overwatch if she were defending this position. And she saw it, just a glint, so brief it might have been imagination. Scope glass catching morning light, 800 meters out, high angle, perfect firing position. Her breath stopped. Not one position, multiple. She counted them with the speed of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. 7 distinct positions, all with clear fields of fire on the approach to the communications hub, all occupied. This wasn't light resistance. This was an ambush, a kill box, and Bravo 1-2 was walking straight into it. She keyed her radio, urgent but controlled. Weiler, we have a problem. But before he could respond, the mountain exploded with gunfire. How do you save 12 men when you've sworn never to kill again? The first rounds came from everywhere at once. High-velocity rifle fire that turned cover into dust and sent Rangers scrambling for positions that didn't exist. Reeves went down hard, blood spreading across his shoulder. Sullivan took a round through the thigh and collapsed with a scream that cut through the gunfire like a knife. Captain Weiler's voice cut through the chaos. Contact, multiple hostiles, high ground. Chen returned fire, his designated marksman rifle barking in controlled bursts. But he was shooting at shadows, at positions he couldn't see, at enemies who knew every inch of this terrain and had planned for this moment. Alina's mind raced. 7 snipers, 7 positions she'd identified in that split second before hell broke loose. The Rangers were pinned, exposed. Every second they stayed here, someone else would die. She looked at her duffel bag, the one she'd carried from base, the one no one had asked about. Inside was a rifle, not standard issue, a custom build, Macmillan TAC-338, bolt action, precision instrument designed for one purpose, and attached to the bag's side was an optic system, Leupold Mark V HD, variable magnification, the kind of glass that could resolve a human face at 1,000 meters. 3 years ago, she'd packed this gear away, told herself she'd never use it again, that she was done being that person. But 3 years ago, she hadn't been watching men die because she'd made a promise to her guilt instead of to the living. Her hands moved without conscious thought, muscle memory, training that went deeper than promises. She opened the bag, pulled out the rifle. The weight of it in her hands was like coming home to a place you'd burned down and rebuilt from ash. She attached the optic with movements that were automatic, practiced, inevitable. Weiler saw her. His eyes went wide. "Hart, what the hell are you?" "Trust me," she said. Then she keyed her radio. Her voice was different now. Cold, calm, the voice of someone who'd done this before. "Hold position, I see them." She moved away from the team. Not far, just far enough to get a clear angle, and she went to work. The first sniper was at 820 meters, northeastern ridge, partially concealed behind rock formation. He just fired. Muzzle flash gave away his position. Alina's scope found him. Crosshairs settled on center mass. Windage adjustment for the mountain breeze. Elevation compensation for the angle. Breath in, half breath out. Heartbeat steady. The world narrowed to that circle of glass and the man inside it who was lining up his next shot on Corporal Lawson. The trigger broke, clean, surprising. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder. Through the scope she saw the impact. The sniper jerked, fell backward out of sight. 1 down, 6 to go. But there was something she hadn't told anyone, something she'd buried so deep she almost believed she could forget it. 3 years ago, she'd been on a mission just like this. Different mountain, different team. Her brother had been on that team, Tom Hart, the best spotter she'd ever worked with. They'd been tasked with eliminating a high-value target and his security detail. 8 targets total, she'd seen 7, identified 7, engaged 7, perfect shots, clean kills, mission accomplished. Except there was an 8th, one she'd missed. One who put a bullet through her brother's chest while she was cycling her bolt for the next target. She'd held him while he died, felt his blood warm on her hands, heard his last words. "Not your fault, Alina, you can't see everything." But she should have. That was the job, see everything, account for everything. And she'd failed. 7 men died because of her mistake. Her brother and 6 other soldiers who got ambushed on the exfil because that 8th shooter had time to call in reinforcements. She'd quit the next day, refused to pick up a rifle, took a lateral transfer to communications, buried herself in radio codes and frequencies and anything that didn't require her to look through a scope and remember. But now, 3 years later, on a different mountain with a different team, she was doing it again. And this time, she couldn't afford to miss. The second sniper was at 900 meters, due east, higher elevation, harder shot. He was smart, stayed low, only exposed when he fired. But Alina had patience. She'd learned it from her father, a hunter who taught her that the mountain belongs to whoever can wait the longest. She waited, controlled her breathing, ignored the gunfire around her. Ignored Chen shouting into his radio for air support that was still 10 minutes out. Ignored the blood and the screaming and the knowledge that every second mattered. The sniper shifted, Small movement adjusting his position, it was enough. The rifle spoke again, the man dropped. 2 down, 5 to go. But something was wrong. The enemy snipers weren't random shooters. They were coordinated, professional. They'd set up a crossfire pattern that covered every approach, every escape route. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a designed kill zone. Someone had planned this, someone good. The third sniper was at 750 meters, western ridge, partially obscured by morning shadow. He fired. Chen went down with a scream, clutching his leg. Blood sprayed across the rocks. Alina's jaw tightened. Her finger found the trigger. The world condensed to breath and heartbeat and the millimeter of steel that stood between life and death. The shot echoed across the valley. The third sniper fell. 3 down, 4 to go. She was cycling through positions now. Smooth, mechanical. Her brain calculated trajectories and wind drift and the 1,000 variables that separated a hit from a miss. This was what she'd been trained for, what she'd been born for, the thing she'd run from because it reminded her of failure. But failure was watching good men die, because you were too afraid to do what needed to be done. The fourth sniper made a mistake, moved too quickly, silhouetted himself against the sky for just a second. Alina's crosshairs found him before he realized his error. 4 down, 3 to go. Lawson was shouting something. She couldn't hear it over the ringing in her ears, the tunnel vision that came with combat, but she saw him pointing, gesturing frantically towards Sullivan, who was trying to drag himself to cover while blood pumped from his leg wound. The fifth sniper had Sullivan in his sights. Alina could see it, the angle, the position. In 2 seconds, maybe 3, Sullivan would be dead. She didn't have 2 seconds, she had now. The shot was rushed, not perfect, but good enough. The sniper jerked. His rifle discharged into the air. He tumbled from his position, falling, until he hit rocks below with a sound that carried across the valley. 5 down, 2 to go. But those last 2 were smart. They'd seen their teammates fall, knew someone was hunting them. They went silent, stopped shooting, became ghosts. Alina scanned the ridgelines. Her scope swept across rock and shadow, searching, calculating, where would she be if she were them, where would she go? There, northern approach, a crevice in the rock face, natural sniper hide. She couldn't see him, but she could feel him. The way a deer feels a hunter in the woods, some instinct older than thought. She waited, patient still, the rifle steady against her shoulder. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time did strange things in combat, compressed and expanded, made heartbeats feel like hours. Then movement, so slight it might have been wind, but wind didn't wear camouflage. The sixth sniper was repositioning, trying to get a better angle on the Rangers below. Alina's finger tightened, the trigger broke, the recoil familiar as breathing. 6 down, 1 to go. But the last one was the best, had to be. The one they'd saved for Overwatch. The one who'd watched 6 teammates die and hadn't panicked, hadn't broken position. That was discipline, training, the mark of someone who'd done this before. Alina's radio crackled, Weiler's voice, strained, urgent. "Hart, we need to move, we've got wounded. Air support is 5 minutes out, but we can't stay here." She didn't respond, couldn't. Every ounce of her focus was on finding that last shooter, the one who could kill them all if she didn't find him first. "Where are you? Where would I be?" Then she saw it, not the sniper, but the mistake. A shadow that didn't match the terrain, a darkness in the rocks that was slightly wrong, too angular, too deliberate. She adjusted her scope, zoomed in, and there he was, almost invisible, wrapped in gilly netting that matched the stone, positioned in a cluster of boulders at 1,100 meters, extreme range. Wind was picking up. Angle was severe. This was the shot her instructors at Fort Benning would have called impossible, the shot that separated good snipers from legends, the kind that required not just skill but something else. Faith, trust, the willingness to believe you could thread a needle from a mile away. She made her calculations, accounted for everything: wind, distance, the curvature of the Earth, the rotation of the planet, details most people never thought about, but that meant life or death at this range. Breath in, half out, heartbeat slowing, the world narrowing to a point so small it might as well not exist. And in that moment she thought of her brother, Tom, who'd believed in her when she stopped believing in herself, who'd told her even as he died that she couldn't see everything, couldn't save everyone, that being human meant accepting limits. But maybe limits were just another word for fear. Maybe running from what you were good at because you'd failed once was just another way of dying. The trigger broke. For a long moment nothing happened. The bullet traveled through thin mountain air. 1,100 meters, more than half a mile. Enough distance for physics to whisper that maybe this time, maybe just this once, the universe would say no. But the universe doesn't argue with mathematics, and Alina's mathematics were perfect. Through the scope she saw the distant figure jerk, fall forward, the rifle tumbling from his hands. 7 down, 0 to go. The gunfire stopped. The mountain went silent except for wind and the distant sound of helicopter rotors growing louder. Alina lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, not from adrenaline, from the weight of what she'd just done. 7 men dead, 7 shots fired, 7 lives ended because she'd made a choice to be who she was instead of who she'd been trying to become. She keyed her radio. Her voice was flat, empty. All hostiles eliminated. Bravo 1-2 is clear for exfil. Behind her the Rangers stared. Chen was on the ground, medic wrapping his leg wound. Sullivan was pale but alive. Reeves had a makeshift tourniquet on his shoulder. Lawson stood with his rifle lowered, mouth open. Captain Weiler walked toward her, slow, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "Hart," he said quietly, "what the hell was that?" She looked at him, those gray eyes distant again, like looking at something far away. "My job," she said. Then she started breaking down her rifle, hands moving automatically, detaching the optic, securing the weapon, putting it back in the duffel bag where it had been hiding all along. Weiler watched her, watched the way she handled the weapon, the casual efficiency, the muscle memory that spoke of thousands of hours of training. "You're not a comm specialist," he said. It wasn't a question. "I am now," Alina said, and something in her voice suggested that was all the answer he was going to get. The Blackhawks arrived. Combat medics jumped out and started working on the wounded. The team loaded up, bloody, shocked, alive because of a woman they dismissed as just another support specialist. As the helicopter lifted off, Alina looked back at Korvac Ridge, at the 7 positions she'd identified and eliminated in less than 4 minutes, at the mountain that had tried to kill them and failed. She thought of her brother, of the promise she'd made, of the 3 years she'd spent running from her own capability. And she wondered if maybe redemption wasn't about becoming someone different. Maybe it was about accepting who you'd always been, scars and all. What do you say to men who thought they knew you, but didn't know anything at all? The flight back to Fob Serpent was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that fills spaces where words should be but aren't. The wounded sat with medics hovering over them, starting IVs, checking vitals, radioing ahead to the field hospital. Chen's leg was wrapped tight. Sullivan's thigh tourniquet had been upgraded to proper pressure dressings. Reeves looked pale but stable. The others just stared, at their hands, at the helicopter floor, at anything except Alina Hart, who sat in the corner with her duffel bag on her lap and her eyes fixed on some middle distance that might as well have been another world. Lawson finally broke the silence, his Texas drawl slower than usual, more careful. "You're a sniper." Alina didn't look at him. "Was." That wasn't "was." That was current tense, active voice, present-day ass-kicking. She said nothing. Her jaw worked like she was chewing on words she didn't want to swallow. Chen spoke up from his stretcher, voice tight with pain. 7 shots, 7 kills. At ranges most designated marksmen wouldn't even attempt. That's not just training, that's elite-level work. It's over, Alina said quietly. I did what needed doing. Now I go back to being a comm specialist. Like hell you do, Weiler said. He was sitting across from her, arms crossed, eyes sharp. When we get back, you're going to sit down with me and explain exactly who you are and why someone with your skill set is pretending to be a radio operator. With respect, sir, my service record speaks for itself. I transferred into communications 3 years ago. That's who I am now. Your service record, Weiler said slowly, is clearly missing some very important details. Because that, he gestured toward her duffel bag, was not the work of someone who picked up a rifle for the first time in 3 years. That was muscle memory, instinct, the kind of shooting that comes from being the best at what you do. Alina met his eyes. For just a moment he saw something there. Pain, old and deep and carefully buried, then she looked away. I was a sniper instructor at Fort Benning, she said. Her voice was flat, reciting facts from someone else's life. Trained designated marksmen, ran advanced courses, had a 98% qualification rate, top scores in the program. The Rangers exchanged glances. An instructor at Benning. That meant she'd been teaching the teachers, training the people who trained everyone else. What happened? Lawson asked, softer now, like he was starting to understand that whatever answer came next, it was going to hurt. Alina was quiet for a long moment. The helicopter's rotors beat the air. The wounded groaned. The mountain fell away beneath them. I failed, she said finally. That's what happened. I failed when it mattered most. She didn't elaborate, didn't explain, and something in her tone said that door was closed, locked, not up for discussion. But Chen, sharp even through pain medication, picked up on something. You said 7 shots, 7 kills, like you were counting, like you needed to get exactly 7. Alina's hands tightened on her duffel bag, knuckles white. Let it go, Sergeant, Weiler said quietly. He'd seen that look before, on soldiers who'd survived things that should have killed them, on men who carried ghosts no one else could see. But Chen was persistent, or maybe just too medicated to read the room. 7 isn't random, that's specific, that's. I missed one once, Alina said. Her voice was so quiet they almost didn't hear it over the helicopter noise. 3 years ago, different mission, different mountain. I identified 7 targets, eliminated them, perfect shots, textbook execution, except there was an 8th, one I didn't see, one who killed my brother and 6 other soldiers because I wasn't good enough. The helicopter went silent except for the rotors. So yes, she continued, I count. I count every shot, every target, every variable. Because if I don't, if I miss even one, people die. Good people. People I'm supposed to protect. She looked at them now, really looked at them, and they saw it, the weight she carried, the guilt that had driven her away from the one thing she was extraordinary at. I'm sorry about your brother, Weiler said quietly. Alina nodded, just once, acknowledgement without acceptance. But you saved us today, all of us. That's got to count for something. It counts for the fact that I can live with myself tonight, she said. It doesn't change what happened 3 years ago, and it doesn't mean I'm going back to being a sniper. I did what I had to do. Now it's done. The helicopter started its descent, Fob Serpent rising up below them. Prefab buildings and blast walls and the organized chaos of a forward operating base in hostile territory. Lawson leaned forward. Hart, I don't know what you went through, can't imagine it, but today you were one of us. You bled with us, fought with us. That's not nothing. I didn't bleed, Alina said. Bullshit, Chen gestured to his wrapped leg. We all bled, some of us just show it on the outside. The Black Hawk touched down. Dust swirled. Medical personnel rushed forward with gurneys. The wounded were loaded off first. Chen fighting the medics, insisting he could walk. Sullivan too pale to argue. Reeves quiet and cooperative, which worried everyone because Reeves was never quiet. Alina waited until the others had departed. Then she shouldered her duffel bag and stepped out into the Afghan heat. Captain Weiler stopped her before she could disappear into the maze of buildings. "We're not done talking about this." "Yes, sir." "And Hart, thank you. You saved 12 lives today. Whatever happened before, today you were exactly what we needed." She looked at him, those gray eyes searching his face for something. Forgiveness maybe, or permission, or just understanding that some wounds don't heal, they just become part of who you are. "You're welcome, sir." Then she walked away, just another soldier on a busy base, except she wasn't just another soldier, and everyone who'd been on that mountain knew it. In the command center, Colonel Morrison was waiting, 62 years old, career officer, the kind of man who'd seen enough war to know that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look harmless. "Specialist Hart," he said as she entered, "sit." She sat ramrod straight, eyes forward. Morrison pulled up a file on his computer, scrolled through it with the careful attention of someone who reads between the lines. "Your report says you provided communication support during a combat operation at Korvac Ridge. It says you coordinated air support and maintained radio contact with base. It says you performed your duties in an exemplary manner under fire." "Yes, sir." It doesn't say anything about 7 confirmed kills at ranges up to 1,100 meters. Funny how that got left out. Alina said nothing. Morrison leaned back in his chair. "You know what's interesting? 3 years ago there was an incident, classified. A sniper team eliminated a high-value target and his security detail. 7 confirmed kills, textbook operation, except the team got hit on exfil. 7 KIA, including the spotter who happened to be the sniper's brother. The after-action review ruled it operator error, failure to properly clear the area before engagement." Alina's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. The sniper involved requested immediate transfer to a non-combat role. Request was granted. Since then, she's been a communications specialist. No disciplinary issues, no performance problems, just quiet competence in a job that used someone operating at about 30% of their capability. He closed the file, looked at her. "That was you." "Yes, sir." "And today, you picked up a rifle for the first time in 3 years and pulled off 7 shots that will be taught in advanced sniper courses for the next decade. Want to tell me why?" Alina took a breath. "Because 12 Rangers were about to die and I had the skills to prevent it, so I did." "Just like that." "Just like that." Morrison nodded slowly. "The investigation into that mission 3 years ago was bullshit. You know that, right? Army needed someone to blame, needed a reason why good soldiers died. So they blamed the sniper who survived, said she should have seen the 8th hostile, should have cleared the area more thoroughly, should have been perfect." Alina's eyes flickered, surprise maybe, or hope. "I read the actual reports," Morrison continued. "Not the sanitized version, the real ones. You were operating in terrain that gave you maybe 60% visibility. You identified and neutralized 7 hostiles in positions that most snipers wouldn't have spotted at all. The 8th man was in a cave system that didn't show up on any recon. No thermal signature, no visual confirmation, no reasonable way you could have known he was there." "I should have known," Alina said quietly. "Why, are you psychic? Can you see through solid rock, or are you just human like the rest of us?" She didn't answer. "Your brother's death wasn't your fault. The investigation was wrong. Politics and ass-covering and the military's need for neat explanations to messy situations. But that doesn't change the fact that you've spent 3 years punishing yourself for something you couldn't have prevented." Morrison stood, walked to the window, looked out at the base. "I'm not going to order you back into a sniper role. That's not how this works, but I am going to tell you something. Today you saved 12 lives. Yesterday, 3 months ago, a sniper on this base known only as the Shadow of Korvac killed or wounded 62 American soldiers. He operated from positions we couldn't find, took shots we couldn't predict. We lost good people trying to hunt him down. He turned to look at her. You eliminated that threat today. You ended a kill chain that's been haunting this region for months. That matters. It matters more than an unjust investigation 3 years ago. It matters more than your guilt. It matters more than anything except the lives you saved. Alina swallowed hard, felt something crack inside her chest. Some wall she'd built brick by brick from shame and grief, and the conviction that she didn't deserve to be good at the thing that got her brother killed. I don't want to be a sniper anymore, she said. Her voice was small, the voice of someone who'd convinced herself that wanting and deserving were the same thing. I know, Morrison said gently, but maybe what you want isn't the only thing that matters. Maybe what those 12 Rangers need matters too. Maybe what this base needs matters. Maybe it's time to stop punishing yourself and start being who you actually are. He sat back down, pulled out a form, filled it out with quick, efficient strokes. I'm putting you in for a commendation. Silver Star, for valor under fire, for eliminating a high-value target that's been killing our people for months. You're a hero, Hart, whether you want to be or not. I'm not a hero, Alina said, her voice cracked. I'm someone who got lucky, and I'm not interested in testing that luck again. So you'll go back to being a radio operator? Yes. And if your team needs you again, if they're in danger? Alina looked at him, really looked at him. Then I'll do what I have to do, but I won't carry a rifle unless there's no other choice. I won't take a sniper designation. I won't teach at Bennying or anywhere else. Because every time I look through a scope, sir, I see my brother dying. I see the 8th man I didn't see. I see the failure that killed 7 people, and I can't live like that every day. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Understood, you're dismissed, specialist. Get some rest. Alina stood to leave. Hart. She turned. You saved 12 lives today. The Shadow of Korvac had killed or wounded over 60 American soldiers. You ended that. I hope you know that matters. She didn't respond, just walked away, her boots echoing on the concrete floor. Outside the operations tent, Bravo 1-2 was waiting, all of them. Lawson with his arm in a sling and his shoulder bandaged. Reeves with stitches across his face and ear. Chen on crutches, his leg wrapped. Sullivan in a wheelchair, his legs in casts. The rest of the team standing around them. And Weiler at the front. Alina stopped. What is this? Weiler stepped forward. We talked, all of us, and we decided something. Decided what? You keep saying you don't want to be a sniper, that you don't want to be responsible for lives. But Hart, you already are. You're responsible for ours, and we're okay with that. I told Command, Chen interrupted gently. We're not asking you to go back to being an instructor. We're not asking you to pick up a rifle unless you want to. We're asking you to stay with us, with Bravo 1-2, as whatever you want to be. Radio operator, tactical advisor, or just our lucky charm, we don't care. We just want you with us. Alina looked at them, confused. Why? Chen spoke up, leaning on his crutches. Because you bled with us, fought with us. You carried Sullivan out when you could have saved yourself. That's not about being a good shot. That's about being a good person. We trust you. Not because you're the best sniper, Reeves added, touching his bandaged face. Because you give a damn about keeping us alive. And in this line of work, that's rarer than any skill. Lawson grinned despite his injuries. Plus, you're way cooler than a regular radio operator. I mean, that thing you did with the sniper ring. That was some action movie stuff. A ripple of laughter ran through the team, genuine, warm. Alina felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been frozen solid for 3 years, encased in ice and guilt and grief. I don't know if I can, she said quietly. You don't have to know, Weiler said. You just have to try, one mission at a time, one day at a time. We're not asking for promises, just stay." Sullivan wheeled forward, his face still pale but his eyes bright. "They're calling you something, you know," words spreading across the base, hitting the other units. "Calling me what?" "The ghost sniper of Bravo 1-2. Alina blinked. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe," Sullivan said, "but it's also true. You appeared out of nowhere when we needed you most, saved our asses like a guardian angel with a rifle, then disappeared back into the background like you were never there. If that's not a ghost, I don't know what is." The team nodded in agreement. Alina looked at each of them. These men who judged her when she arrived, dismissed her as just a radio operator, and now stood before her offering something she thought she'd lost forever: family, purpose, redemption. She took a breath. "If I stay, I'm still handling comms. That's non-negotiable. I'm not taking a sniper MOS again." "Deal," Weiler said immediately. "And I'm not taking the sniper designation back. I won't be listed as a marksman on any roster." "Fine. And if any of you call me Ghost Sniper to my face, I'm requesting transfer to a different unit." Laughter, genuine, warm, the kind that came from people who'd survived death together. "Understood," Weiler said, extending his hand. "Do we have an agreement?" Alina looked at his hand, looked at the faces of the men around her, men who'd accepted her, trusted her, needed her. She shook his hand. "All right, I'm in. Can you forgive yourself for the one you couldn't save, while learning to live with the ones you did?" That night, as the sun set over the mountains and painted the sky in colors of fire, Alina stood alone on the perimeter wall of Fob Serpent. She looked toward Korvak Ridge, barely visible now as a dark shadow against the darkening sky. She thought of her brother, of the mission that had gone wrong, of the 7 targets she'd missed and the 7 she hadn't. The weight of those parallel numbers felt like fate trying to tell her something, like the universe keeping accounts. "I did it, Tom," she whispered to the wind, to the ghost of a man who'd believed in her even when she stopped believing in herself. "I finished what you started. I saved them, all of them." A hand touched her shoulder. She turned. Weiler stood beside her, his face soft in the fading light. "You okay?" "No," she said honestly, "but I will be eventually." He nodded. "That's all any of us can do, just keep moving forward." They stood together in silence, watching the light fade and the stars begin to appear, thousands of them, brilliant in the clear desert sky. Somewhere in the valley below, radio chatter crackled. Mission reports, casualty updates, supply requests, weather forecasts, all the mundane details that kept an army functioning. Alina's world, her purpose. But now it was something more. It was a second chance. A chance to be more than her worst failure. A chance to prove that redemption was possible. A chance to save lives instead of mourning the ones she couldn't. 3 weeks later, Bravo 1-2 deployed again. Different mission, different mountain, same team. Alina Hart moved with them, radio pack secure on her back, her custom rifle slung across her chest beside her carbine. She monitored frequencies, called in updates, coordinated with air support. She was still the communications specialist, still the quiet one, still the woman who preferred to stay behind her radio rather than behind her scope. But when Corporal Reeves got pinned by enemy fire at 900 meters and the team couldn't reach him and air support was 10 minutes out, Alina opened her small duffel bag one more time, pulled out the loophole optic, attached it to her rifle with movements that were automatic, practiced, inevitable. "I got him," she said quietly into her mic. And she did, one shot, clean, precise. The enemy sniper fell from his position. Reeves waved from cover, giving her a thumbs up. Safe. Alina lowered the weapon, exhaled slowly, felt the weight of what she'd done, and knew she could carry it now. Not easily, not without cost, but she could carry it. She keyed her radio. "Serpent Base, this is Bravo 1-2. Situation resolved, continuing mission. Chen looked at her over his shoulder, smiled, mouthed two words, ghost sniper. She glared at him, but she didn't correct him. Because maybe, just maybe, she was finally ready to be who she really was. Not the woman who failed once, not the soldier who ran from her past, but the sniper who protected her family, the guardian angel with a rifle and a radio, the ghost of Bravo 1-2. And that she could live with, that she could be proud of. That was enough. In the mountains of Afghanistan, where ancient rocks hold ancient secrets and the wind carries stories of the dead, there's a legend now. Rangers tell it to new arrivals. Pass it along in whispers over coffee in the mess hall. Share it during long watches when the night feels too dark and the enemy feels too close. They talk about a woman who was two people at once. A calm specialist who could call in air strikes with the calm efficiency of someone ordering coffee. And a ghost who appeared when death came calling, who saw what others couldn't, who put rounds on target at distances that made physics seem negotiable. They say she never wanted the job, that she'd walked away from being extraordinary because being ordinary felt safer, that she carried ghosts of her own that weighed more than any rifle. But when her brothers needed her, when the choice was between who she'd been and who she could be, she chose the harder path. The one that hurt, the one that meant looking at her failures every time she looked through a scope. And maybe that's what real strength is, not the absence of fear or doubt or pain, but the willingness to carry those things and still do what needs doing, to be broken and functional at the same time, to accept that you can't save everyone, but that doesn't mean you stop trying to save anyone. Alina Hart learned something on that mountain. Something her brother had tried to tell her with his last breath. That being human means accepting limits. That failure is just another word for trying. That the only unforgivable sin is letting fear of what might go wrong stop you from doing what's right. She didn't become a sniper again, not officially. Never took back the designation. Never went back to teaching at Fort Benning. But she stayed with Bravo 1-2, kept her radio, kept her rifle, kept the small duffel bag with the precision optic that could see across valleys and into the future. And when the moment came, when lives hung in the balance and the choice was between her comfort and their survival, she chose them. Every time, without hesitation. That's the legend, that's the ghost. A woman who learned that dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. That redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something better on top of the ruins. That sometimes the people who seem the least dangerous are the ones who can do the most damage to the things that threaten what they love. 7 shots, 7 lives saved, 7 ghosts laid to rest. And one woman who learned that the only way out is through. That healing doesn't mean forgetting. That strength isn't the absence of scars, but the courage to keep fighting even when you're bleeding. In the end, Alina Hart became exactly what she needed to be. Not perfect, not fearless, not unbroken. Just present, just capable, just willing. And in a world where the mountains remember, and the wind carries the names of the dead, that was more than enough. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.